If you need something, there are people out there that want to help you, and you need to reach out. Otherwise, those people that want to help you, they have no way to see that you are there.
Welcome to Latinx Can, a podcast showcasing Latinx professionals who turn their dreams into realities. I'm your host, la doctora Jenire Flores Delgado, and today I'm here with Dr. Alfredo Ángeles Boza, a university professor who reminds us that even if you derail from your plans, it's never too late to get back on track. And he is here to tell you, si se puede, my friends, si se puede. Dr. Alfredo Ángeles Boza, welcome to Latinx Can.
Thank you, Jenny. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Yeah, the pleasure is ours, and I'm excited to learn a little bit more about you and share your story with our listeners. So let's start by talking about your story. Where does your story begin?
My story begins in a small town north of Peru, north of Lima. The name is Chimbote. I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with this town, but actually, I would say more than 50% of the maps, world maps, will show Chimbote in there. So you can go ahead and search for it in your map. It should be there.
I look it up. I don't know where it is.
It's just a few miles north of Lima. It's a beautiful place next to the beach. So I'm used to the ocean. I love the sound of the waves. That's where I grew up. My parents, my father is an engineer. My mother was an administrative assistant, or at that time what was called a secretary. And both of them actually are not from Chimbote. They met there. My father is from Lima. And as soon as he finished college, he decided to move to Chimbote because there was work there. This is one of those towns that was growing fast at that time. I'm talking about the 1970s. And my mom's family is from Trujillo. So she was born in Trujillo, which is a town northern from Chimbote, a much larger city. So her family moved to Chimbote, same reasons, because Chimbote had tons of work. And both of them come from low-income families. My father was the first one going to college from his family. And I think, I'm sure he's the only one out of his siblings and cousins that went to college. So they met there, and then a few years later, voila, Alfredo is here.
The store came to visit your household, right?
Yes, and they decided to settle there. So I lived there until I was 16.
And so you went to school in Chimbote, and as I understand, your family, they started low income, but then your parents sort of moved up a little bit up the socioeconomical chain through very hard work. Nevertheless, you still had some economic limitations. But your town or the high school that you went to had a very nice experiment going on from which you and maybe your siblings could take advantage of. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. So as you said, right, my parents come from low-income families, but lucky them being baby boomers, right? It was a time where you could change your socioeconomic status, and especially in a town like Chimbote. So they rose to middle class, I would say, upper middle class at some point. And so they tried to give us the best education. I have a brother and a sister. And so we went to the best schools there in Chimbote. So the educational system in Peru is divided in primary school and secondary school. So primary school 1 through 6, it was in this school that it was mainly for women. It was managed by nuns. And then secondary school, the one that you refer with the interesting experiment, which in my opinion, it works. It took the best students from the town. And the way that they did it, is because they had an exam, an entrance exam. And then so all the kids in sixth grade in town will take that test, and then the best ones will go to the school. So then you have a nice group of students that either were overachievers or their parents pushed them to be overachievers. But so not to make it unfair, the school also reserves some positions for kids of low-income families that live around the school, right? Because there is a straight relationship between, how much your parents earn and how good you are.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. So to be fair, that's why they had those extra positions there. And overall, it worked. I would say that, looking at my friends nowadays, pretty much everybody was successful.
That's so important, right? What you're saying, because definitely if your parents have a little more means, then maybe they have more time and more education that they can share with you while you're studying, or even have the means to pay for a tutor to help you do well in exams. So, having that distinction, or recognizing that that is an advantage over other kids, so important.
Exactly, right? There is, for example, I remember the few times that where either my siblings or I had problems, let's say with math or literature, then we had a tutor, just come next day and fix that problem for us. And I think that makes a big difference, right? If one doesn't have access to that, then it becomes more difficult, especially if the parents have to work 24/7.
Yeah. And so then you graduated from high school in Chimbote and then moved to Lima, the capital of Peru, in order to attend university. But the process wasn't very straightforward, just as, applying and getting into the university. So tell us a little bit about how that process went for you.
Yeah, moving to the big city, right? Always exciting, especially when you're 16. But it's a different story at what age you start college, because the entrance exams are different for each school, and then you go and apply to the school where you want to go, and then if you don't enter the first time around, then you get a chance 6 months later or a year later, right? And then you can do that process over and over until you get into school. And one of my friends, for example, he got into the school of his dreams when he was 29. That is 13 years, right?
Wow.
Trying this process. But, we were all happy when he published that on Facebook. We were all happy for him because we knew how hard he worked for that. So that's a different story, right? And then, again, all the social inequalities are mirrored in this exam, right? I could see my friends that didn't have the money to pay for private schooling after finishing school, right? So because there are these places called academias where you go and prepare yourself for the entrance exam, the less money they have, then the worse the schools. It makes a big difference at the end. In my case, I was lucky, right? Because I was still, my family was still in this good economical situation. So they sent me to a good place to prepare. And two of my friends were in the same academia with me. And it was an interesting experience because the three kids, we were there sitting in the classroom the first day. And, the first thing that we could tell is that there was a certain sense of superiority from the students coming from Lima compared to the ones that were not from Lima. And not only that, right, it wasn't just the students, but also the teachers that were there to prepare us for this entrance exam. Instead of encouraging us, I remember on first day, they offered us a deal to register for the next cycle of preparation so we could take advantage of that because we were not going to make it the first time around.
Wow.
And that is upsetting, right? It's embarrassing for somebody who is 16. It took us almost a week to recover from that shock. But the happy ending of the story is that only the three of us that came from Chimbote in that classroom, made it through the entrance exam. So we were happy at the
Yeah.
end. Yes, we show the students from Lima who is the boss.
Yeah, it's karma, right? For that
Yes.
professor, for that teacher. This is a very interesting story because, in the US, we have forcefully had to reckon with the racial differences that are beneath the fabric of the society here, but over the last year and a half, we've seen the inequalities, right, in front of our eyes pretty much every day. And then when we talk with people back in our countries and we talk about these issues of racism, we all say, or the majority of people say, at least in Venezuela, they're like, oh, we Venezuelans, we're not racist. And so it's like a very big, I don't know how to call it, but it's definitely not a misunderstanding, and we just want to ignore the problem. But people think that we're not racist because we are so mixed, because we are the fruit of colonization and we have mestizaje and we don't have like huge racial demarcations in the society, but we definitely are classist, right? We really have these social levels in the society based on our economic standing that allows us to think that we're better than others. And this is an example of that.
Absolutely. So actually in Peru, if you look at the rankings in countries where there is racism, Peru is among the top ones, right? So we sort of recognize that is a problem,
Yeah.
although as you said, right, when you ask people usually their answer is, no, we are not racist.
Yeah.
But in their behavior, in their day-to-day lives, right, you can feel it to the point where, we can recognize the different shades of dark or brown, right? And then you can sort of feel superior to somebody that is a little bit darker than you, right?
Wow.
And that is horrible, right? That is awful, especially, on my side, right? I know that the listeners cannot see me, but in terms of phenotype, I am 50% native Peruvian, right? So that means, and 30+% Chinese.
Yeah.
So that means that I am darker than, most Peruvians.
Yeah.
And, that was a problem. I could feel it
Wow.
every day. So.
Yeah, we have a lot of work to do in terms of our own recognition and our own standing with our history in Latin America, that's for sure. So you enter the university after that first, semester at the academia, and I understand that you weren't totally 100% committed to completing your university studies. Tell us a little bit about how that developed for you.
Yes, because this is where my life becomes interesting, right? Up to that point, right, I always took advantage of the socioeconomical position I was born. But then when I started school, I thought that, okay, I made it to college, right? I got entrance in the first attempt. I'm so happy. I don't have to do anything else in life. And that included studying. And so I started failing in courses. Pretty much, I would not say 50% of the courses, because the school had a policy: if you fail a certain number of courses, then you were out. So I was careful about that, but still I was failing courses, and that was bad because that shouldn't be the purpose of going to college, right? To just have fun. But I didn't understand that, but I wanted that. It was a year that I lived with my grandparents, because my parents did not move with me right away. This is another thing, and this is a parenthesis here. In Peru, it's very common for parents to move with the children.
Oh.
Right? It's not that they just let them go, but most of them, especially if they have the means, they will move with their children. So my parents were going to move. They just needed to sell the house and find a school for my siblings, and all those minor things that you have to do. But, eventually they were going to come to live with me in Lima.
Mm-hmm.
So, but for a year, I have
and
so
you're
much
like,
fun.
I have to take advantage of this time.
Yes, yeah, and yeah, but I learned something from that experience, because eventually, I came to realize that was bad. My parents, after they moved to Lima, unfortunately, they dropped from the socioeconomical position they were in, and all of a sudden they didn't have money for to send my brother and I to a private college. And then so they had to decide, right? So my brother was doing well. He's 2 years younger than me. He was getting A's, right, all the time, every single course. And then you have me, getting B's, C's, F's. And so the decision wasn't difficult. And actually, my family is the kind of family that we talk everything. So they said, look, we have money for one is doing well. What do you think? What will you do? Right? And I admitted, yeah, I should be the one dropping out of school. And so for a semester, right, I didn't go to school. But I was lucky that semester I won this prize to go to Spain. And it wasn't an scholastic prize, as you can imagine, because I wasn't doing well. But it was for watching TV. So you can see where my priorities were.
Yeah. I don't want children to listen to this story, because then they're going to tell their parents, see, Mom, there is the future watching TV.
Yes. If you watch enough TV, right, you can win a prize. But no, don't do that, please. But when I was preparing my trip to Spain, right, where everything was going to be paid for, not just a trip, but staying in hotels, going to different cities, my father told me, look, we don't know when we're going to have money again, so you can go to college. Why don't you stay there in Spain? Lots of Peruvians are going there and staying and working. Eventually, you'll become a legal immigrant, and then you finish your studies there. I said, sure, I'll take a look at that. And I prepared for that, right? My luggage was packed with things just in case I was going to stay there. I think I even had a pot in there in my luggage. You never know. You need to cook, right?
Yeah.
And then so I went to Spain. During the day, I follow, all the directions that we had, right? They took us to museums, saw the best places in Spain. And at night, I tried to do my research, try to see how an illegal immigrant lives there, how you find work. And I was lucky because the prize included taking somebody else. So that somebody else, instead of being a relative of mine, we sold that to somebody that wanted to go to Spain and stay there, right? So that person could show me everything.
Oh, wow.
And that person stayed there, remained there. I don't remember what was his fate, because we lost touch after that. And I said that because I did not stay. After I saw how an illegal immigrant lives there, and I'm sure it's not just in Spain, but everywhere around the world, I thought that it was best for me to study. Let's put it that way. So I went back to Peru. And as the prodigal son, I asked my father to forgive me and please find money anywhere so I could go to school. And then after that, everything changed. And I was lucky that because my brother was getting good grades, then he had a full scholarship. So that meant that the money that was left, then my parents could afford my private education. And then, but after that, I only got A's. Nothing less than that.
Yeah. I think your parents had a backup plan over there, an ulterior motive. And they're like, let's scare them out of this attitude that he's got.
Well, actually, I haven't thought about that. But yes, they always did that. When I was a kid, I was 7 or 8, something like that. I remember I was a tiny kid. And I told my moms that I didn't like something that she did. I don't remember what it was. And I said, I'm going to leave home. I'm tired of living with you guys. This is not a place for me. I'm out. And my mom, right away, she took me out of the house, closed the door and said, you want to leave out? All right, bye. And then I was there, not knowing what to do, right? Because I didn't even have a chance to put together a luggage, right? Or anything, or my candy in my pockets. And I think after 5 minutes, I started crying and knocking at the door. So that was always their approach.
Yeah. I think psychologists will question that parenting method these days.
Yeah, I don't want to get in trouble
Yeah. Yeah. I
or
wouldn't
get my
say,
parents in trouble.
I think that's a common tactic that they used back in the days. So then you finished your career in Lima, right? And then they offered you a job right away. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, because I was getting good grades, right? And it happened to be in the important subjects because very early in college, in that college where I was, it was sort of liberal arts for a couple of years, and then you do 3 years of just chemistry. So basically, I started getting good grades close to starting chemistry and all through chemistry. Right? So a professor who was retiring from one school, another school, actually a very good one in Peru, Universidad Cayetana Heredia, told me, hey, I'm leaving, so you want to take my position. You still have to go through an interview process, right? But I'm going to highly recommend you because you're doing well. And I was so happy. I was blown away. That's what I wanted to do, to teach at a university. And if it's a really good one, even better. And it was just right away when finishing college. So I was super happy. And I was, trying to do my best, teaching for the first time. It was fun. But then I was told that because I only had a bachelor's degree, that wasn't going to be enough in the future, that they wanted to have professors that had a PhD.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm pretty sure nowadays, all the universities in Peru, all of the professors have to have at least a master's degree. Most of them have PhDs. So then I was informed that I should look for a place to do my PhD, and I was welcome to come back. And so that's how my tour, right, to USA started, because first of all, I knew who I wanted to work for, Professor Kim Dunbar. That's the second part of this story. But the first part is, okay, I have to go to USA, I have to get a PhD. I know that I'm good at reading books. I can perform well in exams, but am I good at doing research? Maybe I'm terrible. I'm not going to be able to finish the PhD. I'm sure many people ask themselves that question. So I decided to do an experiment once again. And nowadays they call it a postbac, but I didn't know that that was possible. So I wrote to this professor in Texas, and I asked her if she had money for me to work there, right, for a few months. And I told her, look, I can pay for my trip, but I need a salary there. I have been a good student, but I have no experience in research.
Yeah.
And she emailed me back, and she said, yes, come here. I'll give you a salary and stipend, and you can work in my lab.
Wow. Without knowing her, just from finding her on the early days of the internet.
Yes, the primitive days of internet, right? I don't think that even was in Yahoo Answers.
Wow.
So no, it was the early days of internet, and I took advantage of that. I didn't know the Professor Tracy Hanna at Texas Christian University. I'm sure she also thought, who is this weird guy who is writing to me, asking for an opportunity, right? But it was a great experience for me. Because Tracy was and is a great mentor. So I'm really lucky that I landed that position.
And this is something that I've heard over and over again now after 17 episodes of the podcast, is that the people who really want something, they overcome the fear of rejection somehow. I know we understand that fear is there, but you can't let it be a barrier for you achieving your goals. And we've seen it with several people, with Andres Vidal Gadea, who also just emailed people to see whether they were interested in having a postdoc even before those positions were available. Because, if the opportunity is not there, sometimes you have to create it.
Exactly. That, I don't think I can put it better than you. If you need something, there are people out there that want to help you, and you need to reach out. Otherwise, those people that want to help you, they have no way to see that you are there. And yes, that's has been common in my life. Also for English, my English was terrible. It's still bad, right? Listeners can tell.
It's not that bad.
Oh, thank you. But then what happened is because when I was studying at college, I thought, at some point I'm gonna leave, right? And maybe I'll do a PhD, maybe not. But English is important. So then there was this student from USA on a Fulbright scholarship, right, working in a lab. I saw her, right? I saw her for like full week, right? And I was asking, so who's this person? I thought it's a student from USA. She's doing a Fulbright. So I went up to her and told her, hey, look, you probably need to practice Spanish, right? I can help you with that. And you help me with my English. And, you might think that I'm not a shy person, but I am. I remember, how red I was, but everything worked out. Her name is Charlie Long. She later started her PhD studies at UPenn. But for the time that she was there in Peru, we became good friends. We went on trips together, and she helped me with my English.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
just asking, right?
Yeah. Always find that mutual bond or that connection that you can both identify with, and then everything, it's easier after that.
Right.
And so then you went to the laboratory of Tracy Hannah in order to do your postbac, and then you went on to apply for your PhD, right? Tell us about how you identified the universities that you wanted to apply to and how that process developed for you.
I only wanted to work for Professor Kim Dunbar at Texas A&M. That was something that I had in mind for a few years because I read about her work in a book that I was reading when I was an undergraduate student. And then I read her papers, and then I said, this is a person I want to work for. Her work is interesting, it looks exciting, and also looks challenging. So this is something I want to do. And so when I was working for Tracy, I took a trip to College Station, right, a few miles away. And I met with Kim, and we talked about it. And I told her that I wanted to work for her, that was my dream. And, I was expecting her to say, well, welcome to my lab, Alfredo. You start tomorrow. But she said, you have to apply. And once you apply, we can start talking. In my defense, I didn't know exactly how the American system worked. But then at the end, once I applied, I was admitted, then, Kim reached out to me and we talked, and we right away decided that we'll work together, or that I would work under her tutelage. So that was the story of working with Kim, who is also a great mentor, right? Somebody that has helped me in my career.
Yeah. And that's such a cool story that you identified Kim Dunbar as the person that you wanted to work for, I don't know, 5, 10 years prior to you doing your PhD, and talk about having a goal and then making it happen.
Well, as I said, when I decided to become a good student, right, then chemistry was the only thing for me. That's an advice I don't want to give anybody. You should have hobbies as well. But I didn't have hobby. For me, chemistry was everything. I said, look, I don't want to be poor. I want to get a job. I need to study, and I love chemistry, so I'm just going to study chemistry. And that's what I did.
So then you graduated from your PhD, and after a short time in industry, you decided that that was not for you, and you decided to become a professor. But the odds of becoming a professor are pretty low. What was that process like for you?
Well, once again, I was scared. That is a constant in my life, always being scared from one place to the other. The process was interesting because, as you said, right, the odds are against the applicant. Then you hear about the other problems, right? Or at least at that time, that it's more difficult for somebody of color, to get a position. And even when you don't listen to that, when you just look at books that teach you how to apply for a job, right? I read one from beginning to end when I was looking for a job in industry, right? But this still applies for any other job, right? Including academic jobs. I think that they had in there, they said, the better chances for you to get hired is when you are similar to the person that is interviewing you. But they were trying to put it in a different way, right? Not the way that we now think about it. They were trying to say, so if the person that talks to you, that's interviewing you, is a fast talker, talk fast. If it's a slow talker, talk slow. Try to match the way they talk, because that is also going to help you connect with that person. And that was one of the many tricks that the book had. And it was good. I tried to do everything, right, that was in that book. But basically the core, right, the idea was to mimic your interviewer. And when you're a person of color, right, there is one problem, because you can mimic almost everything, but there is one thing that you cannot mimic, right? You cannot be that white male on the other side of the desk. And I think that is a disadvantage, but I think, it's starting to disappear. I think that there are more people of color and minorities in academia.
There's still a big gap, right? But definitely a step in the right direction. But one thing that I've learned from my own experience is that when I was in grad school, I didn't understand the racial connotations during the interview process, or even during, the process of looking for jobs. So for me, for example, I heard early on in my PhD that women were underrepresented in scientific fields. And we had a group called Women in Science and Engineering. And I joined that from a very early stage of my PhD. And then I became aware of that issue. And I went on for 5 years being a member of that group. And what I learned from it, for example, was like, women don't feel comfortable negotiating. So at the moment when you have a job offer, you need to negotiate. You don't just accept the salary that you get, right? So that was the one thing that stuck with me. And so when I got a job, I was like, I need to negotiate. I need to be able to do this, right? But then when I started working, I then understood that white women are not the same as Latino women. And that was a huge learning that it was very difficult for me to understand. And when I talk to people about it, people sometimes take it from the place where, you shouldn't victimize yourself. And I agree with that. I don't think the victim attitude fits anybody. But what I get from this understanding that I get now is knowledge. And I can use that knowledge to my favor now. Now I understand that not only are they looking at me as a woman, they're looking at me as a woman of color. And that is hugely important for the way that I try to change the narrative when I meet with these people. It's a huge piece of knowledge that now that I have it, I know and I use it to my favor. But if you don't have that information and if you don't have that understanding, then it will hamper you, because that's just the way that things are.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, in general, right, we know that for a woman, everything is more difficult, right? Even worse, everything is more expensive, as economists show, with the women tax, right? And for a woman of color, right, it's even worse than, for example, somebody like me who happens to be a male. But yeah, there are things that you can take into for your advantage if you know, right, and use that knowledge.
Right. And so tell us a little bit about how that process of interviewing for a job in academia went for you, because one of the things that you shared with us is that the process itself is a learning process. One should take it like that, because those are opportunities to learn and to improve so that you can eventually land the job.
Yes, exactly. You have to learn as much as possible from any event in life, right? And searching for a job in academia is one of them. So you have the interview process. You meet with professors, right? But also you have to give talks. And I think that's the most important part. When you give your talk, it has to be in a way that they understand what you're doing, they understand the importance. And also there is a second talk that you will talk about your future research. You have to make them believe that future research is going to be fundable and that everybody's going to like it, right? So the common thing in these two talks is that you have to have a high level of excitement from your audience. And in my first interview, I had zero excitement. I'm pretty sure people were falling asleep in there, but I couldn't see because it was dark.
Yeah.
And one can always say, well, they didn't get me. And I have heard that response from a few friends of mine that, have gone through this interview process. But that's not the best approach, right? The best approach is, what did I do wrong and how can I improve in the different aspects that I identified that are a problem for me? And that's what I did. So first interview, terrible, right? I will, if I have to give it a grade, it was an F, and I didn't get an offer from them. And then my other interviews, on the phone or in person, were improving little by little, right? I identified what were the problems in my presentation or when I was talking to them, up to the point when I interviewed at UConn, University of Connecticut. I knew that I had good chances of getting an offer because everything went well. I had ironed out every problem during my interview process in the past. So I think that is important, right? Being able to criticize yourself. Difficult because it hurts, right? Because in academia, everybody's criticizing you, right? You submit a paper, you get the reviewers' comments, and they criticize you.
Yeah.
It's critic at every stage. So you try to defend yourself. And then so if you start criticizing yourself, then, right, you pretty much destroy yourself. But don't take it like that. Don't take it personal.
Yeah.
So just do that. And I think that is a good approach. I don't know if it's the best approach, but it worked for me.
No, and I agree with you. I mean, it's an arduous process and it's a difficult process. I think the ones who only go through one interview and get a job are very few. And I remember many interviews that didn't work for me. I think for my first job, I had to interview maybe in 4 or 5 different places. And at the end of the day, I was lucky I got 2 offers and I was able to choose for one. Many people don't get that option.
I mean, that's excellent, right? 50% of offers out of your interview, that is amazing. So, I mean, that is very difficult. People that haven't been in the market don't understand how difficult it is for either industry or academia, right? At certain point. So 50% is great.
Yeah, and the one thing that I realized is that each one of them made me better. So by the time that I finally interviewed at the places where I got job offers, it wasn't only because I was, a good candidate, but also because I had learned how to do the interview process, which was the biggest learning. Because when you go, sometimes in chemistry, in the industry, you get full day interviews at companies or at least a couple of hours, and people are watching you from the minute that you step onto somebody's car to take you to the place. So I didn't understand that in the very first one, and I'm actually very opinionated and argumentative. And so I started, in my very first interview, I didn't sort of argue with people, but I also didn't stay quiet. And now I know that that is something that didn't give me an extra point in that first interview. But it was a process that I went through and I learned from it. And I think that's the most important part.
Right. And as you said, right, we learn from these experiences. When I apply for jobs in industry, right, when I just finished my PhD, I said that I read a book, right, from cover to last page. But what I didn't say is that I didn't read the last chapter on time. The last chapter was, how do you ask for more money?
Yeah.
How do you mention your salary and benefits?
Yeah.
And I regret that because I took the first offer and I took the money that they were offering. I didn't ask for more. I still must say that it was an offer. The money was much more than I have earned up to a few years, right,
Yeah.
recently. So, and that was after what, almost 10 years.
Yeah.
So it was a good offer, but you should never take the first offer.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So then you become a professor at the University of Connecticut and you enter the tenure track, which is the goal of most professors, I would say. Not everybody, but a lot of people aim to be a tenured professor. But getting tenure is one of the most difficult things that happen in academia. So, can you walk us through what that process of getting tenure looks like?
So first of all, there is no road for you, and that's something that many people are fighting for. We want clear rules of what is needed to get tenure, right? To put it in numbers, although that can also be dangerous, right? So you are told that you need to get several papers, but never a number. You're told to get a certain amount of money, also never a number, right? So what they say is, okay, we don't give you numbers because we actually count on how prestigious your papers will be or the awards and grants that you get, right? So it's extremely blurry. And I think that's also one of the problems why you have people failing through the tenure process, right? Or not going through the tenure process. But here comes, right, the key. As many people as you know, not only from your school, right, your friends, whoever did a PhD with you, a postdoc with you, or somebody that you met at a meeting, ask, okay, what do I have to do? What do I need? So I had friends that helped me with information, right? They had gone through the process before, so they told me what to do, what not to do, when to do it. Right? So, for example, getting those high impact factor papers, I saved several of my important stories to the end because I was trying to accumulate as much data as possible so I could get good papers out of them. Also, write as many proposals as possible is one of the advice that you get. Others say, just slow down, try to write a few proposals, but with more quality. I went for that approach. You're going to get all kinds of advice. If the time comes, feel free to reach out to me. I'll try to give you all the advice that I receive and what I did. That doesn't mean that there is a magical recipe for it,
Right.
right? I can tell you what worked for me.
Yeah.
And my approach was, try to save stories, not to publish too quickly, but wait a little bit so they become stronger stories. Try to make friends in the system, right? Networking, right?
Yeah.
What people call networking, that is extremely important because the more friends that you have, then the better chance you have to get a paper accepted, a proposal funded, or presenting, right? Presenting at conferences is going to be extremely important because they give you a lot of street credibility, right? Street cred. And that's what you need. And so for all of that, you need to have a strong network, lots of friends.
Networking is so important everywhere you go because unfortunately it is based on those relationships that people make decisions, and it's not necessarily the fair way to do it because like we said, we talked about disadvantages and socioeconomic differences that all play into who you know, right? So the more money you have, the more people want to be your friend, the more connections you have. But regardless, just making that effort at networking and meeting people and establishing those connections is important. And in Swaziland, in Eswatini, when I went to my school there was this friend of mine that he's a very dear friend of mine, Tato, and he was the one guy who believed in networking when he was like 15 years old, right? And so he was all about his brand. And we had Shelby Davis, who is the person who pays for the scholarships of most of the people who graduated from the United World Colleges to study in the US. And he came to visit the school in Eswatini. And so we were all, 16, 17-year-old kids. We didn't care if Shelby Davis would ever know who we were. But Tato cared. And Tato prepared, I think, business cards to give to Shelby Davis. And he made sure that he introduced himself and that he shook his hand and that he made a good impression. And back then, 12 years ago, we all made fun of him for being, this little kid who wanted to be great at networking. And now I look at him and I'm like, man, I should have learned a few things from him. He had it right.
Where did he learn that, right? Why did they teach that in school?
Yes.
No, that's true, right? Like, for example, at some point when I was working in industry, I thought, okay, if I'm going to stay here, I need to learn to play golf. And I love soccer, right? But I thought, okay, if I really want to go up, I see the bosses, they are not playing soccer. I have invited them to play soccer. They don't play
the executives are not playing soccer.
I need to play golf with them. Yeah, little things like that, right? I'm not saying that you have to change. I'm just saying that you have to learn more things, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't going to drop soccer. I was just going to learn a new sport. And so I could network. That is key, as you said, in industry, in academia, everywhere in life.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Alfredo, is there anything else that you would like to share with this community that can help us reach the goals that we have all traced for ourselves?
I think that the one thing that I would like from our community is a stronger networking, right? I see that from other groups. I don't want to single them out, right? But for example, I see my colleagues from Asia, they have a strong network, they help each other. And we should do the same for Latin Americans, right? And sometimes we stay divided because we say, I have my network of Peruvians or I have my network of Argentinians. But we have to forget that, right? We left our countries, we are here. So we should try to form a single community and help each other, right? Give advice to each other. That I think that is key, right? If you get the right advice or the right push, you can go far. And so a strong network of Hispanics is what we need.
Yeah, I agree. And that's part of why we want to create this community at Latinx Can, because we understand that, yes, there are a lot of differences. We are a diverse community because despite what many people think, we don't all come from Mexico, but we understand that, and we understand that we all have singularities we come from different cultures, but there is more that unite us than divide us. And in this country, we are few. We're not the majority. And so if we keep being sort of segregated into our own communities or into our own countries only, then we divide that power that we have. But as a community of Latinx people, there's strength in numbers, and we can definitely help each other out. And we already have those things that unite us. We all like soccer. At least we watch it on TV. We might not play, but we all like those things, and the majority of us can have those things that make us one, and that's very, very important, and the reason why we want to continue doing what we're doing here at Latinx Can, so that we can create that community where we can all support each other.
Exactly, and I'm very thankful for what you're doing, right? I wish I could listen to your podcast 20 years ago, right? I think I would have been more successful if I had listened to you 20 years ago, but I'm sure I can still take advantage of it, and many other people will do that.
Thank you so much for that feedback. I really appreciate it. And Alfredo, thank you for your time and your advice that you shared with us today.
Thank you, Jenny. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. And if you want to put a face to the voices you just heard, you can follow us on Instagram at LatinxCan. If you have questions or feedback for us, you can email us at latinxcan@gmail.com. And if you like this episode, please leave a review. It is the quickest way to grow as a community. Once again, thank you for listening, and remember, unidos somos más.